From a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Democracy, that's a word that just, that's one of those words you hear more and more every day. The kids are saying it, the adults are saying it, the people who don't even really know what it means are declaring it. It's that thing we all love.
I love democracy.
And nowhere is democracy's fragile nature more entertainingly illustrated than in Star Wars, right? It's a space opera with lightsabers and wizards with daddy issues, sure, but the real villain in Star Wars is parliamentary procedure.
We have the Senate bogged down in procedures.
I was not elected to watch my people die while you discuss this invasion in a committee.
When I was a kid, I only watched it for the Force. Now, as an adult, I'm watching The Phantom Menace as a documentary. If you've been online this week, you've seen the opening crawl for a reason. And it's because shit's in shambles. We are in Phantom Menace mode right now. Democracy, for those who don't know, maybe you're watching in a place, in a country where there's not a democracy, like America. A democracy is a system of government which people exercise it through elected representatives or themselves, right? Democracies are characterized by free and fair elections, the rule of law, separation of powers, the protection of individual rights and freedoms, and in theory should function as a insurance that the government will reflect the will of the people and preventing concentration from one single ruler or a governing body having all the power. In Star Wars, the Galactic Republic is the most dysfunctional Senate since our own. Basically, it serves as a representation of democracy operating through elected senators, which different representatives from different planets debate and they create legislation. But as we see in the prequel trilogy, the Republic's democracy is deeply flawed. It's vulnerable to an authoritarian takeover. Star Wars has always been a saga deeply rooted in political allegory. George Lucas drew inspiration from historical events and the fall of democracies to construct the rise and fall of the Galactic Republic and the prequels. The prequel trilogy explores how stable democracies can be manipulated into an authoritarian regime, right? Through manufactured crises, economic manipulation, the erosion of civil liberties. The galaxy in Star Wars undergoes a profound transformation between the prequel trilogy, right, which is The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, and the original trilogy, which is A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Prequels go pretty deep into politics, and that bored a lot of people when it first came out, but it's showing us not just the how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. The B plot is the declining republic on the brink of collapse, where the original trilogy already presents you with that oppressive galactic empire regime facing a rebellion. Like, looking at these differences help illuminate the overarching themes of the saga, which is democracy's fragility, its dangers of unchecked power, and the fight for freedom. That's what Star Wars is all about. The Star Wars prequel trilogy serves as a cautionary tale about democracy's collapse and ending with authoritarian rule. The Phantom Menace starts with a trade dispute, where Revenge of the Sith ends with the Republic just transforming into a galactic empire dictatorship. These parallel modern political times, all right? Particularly Trump's trade war, his use of propaganda, and erosion of democratic norms. Listen, I'm not going to preach to you this entire time, but I am going to just show you parallels. And I hope that if you think differently than I do politically, you can at least see some of these parallels. It used to be science fiction to think this, but now it's reality. And the prequels show us how one man can destabilize the entire republic, a republic upheld by democracy, and how it can erode from within, and how its citizens prioritize power over principles. It's a warning that democracy is not some self-sustaining car. It requires vigilance, accountability, commitment to its core values, whatever those are, to prevent that galactic empire. The Phantom Menace, the Senate, is paralyzed by bureaucracy, right? It fails to act decisively, allowing Palpatine to rise in influence, right? Because at the start of Phantom Menace, we're introduced to the Galactic Republic, which is a massive interplanetary government where elected officials debate important issues and vote policies, and ET is also there for some reason. And it's all going great. And by great, you mean incomprehensibly and completely paralyzed by bureaucracy. For example, the Republic's response to the Trade Federation blockading Naboo, a literal act of terror, was to, and I quote, send a committee to discuss it. That's not how a government works. That's how a homeowners association with delusions of grandeur works. Okay? And that's why the prequels are a story of a republic in decline. And it used to be the beacon of democracy, and now it's largely controlled by bureaucrats, corporations, and the Trade Federation. And now they've openly defied the Senate and have blockaded Naboo. This is characterized by political maneuvering, as Chancellor Valorum is struggling to sort of maintain control between the two powers, allowing ambitious figures. Enter Senator Palpatine, who is a soft-spoken man who looks like your grandfather right before he's about to say something racist that's going to ruin Thanksgiving. At the same time, he's also training to be a Dark Lord of the Sith, so like many politicians, he's deeply closeted, which makes Amidala forced into a position of calling for a vote of no confidence in the current chancellor, paving the way for Palpatine's rise, which was his plan the whole time. There's a real-world parallel in the Emperor Magatine's trade war with China. Much like the Federation's blockade, Emperor Magatine's aggressive tariffs and sanctions, they're framed as an effort to protect workers, but really they're harming farmers, workers. It's creating economic instability. Manufacturers and consumers are both fucked. Rather than resolving the existing issues, the trade war exacerbates them, allowing Emperor Magatine to position himself as a nationalist strongman fighting against foreign influence. Similarly, the Trade Federation's blockade allowed Palpatine to manipulate the public perception of himself, to portray himself as the only person capable of resolving this crisis. So, I mean, what was the warning of the Phantom Menace? And the answer is the menace himself, Palpatine, right? Darth Sidious. Palpatine was his slave name. The fall of democracy doesn't happen overnight. No. It is by somebody who plays the long game. He orchestrates a trade blockade. Then he manipulates Queen Amidala into calling for a vote of no confidence against Chancellor Valorum, a sitting chancellor. It's essentially a Star Wars version of gerrymandering, only with a few more lightsabers and fewer Supreme Court justices pretending that their hands are tied, or that they've tied someone's hands behind their back. Jar Jar is MAGA. Okay, he's clueless, he's hated by most people, and he kisses up to a leader who despises him. But the Jedi are Democrats. They're ineffective tools. They are being manipulated by a system that is militarizing, that's pushing them into militarization, and they drop the ball on an ensuing uprising. At least when Amidala's ship was being attacked by the Trade Federation blockade, they had R2-D2 to fix it. All we have is Chuck Schumer on the wing yelling that the Ninth Circuit Court ruled the blockade to be unconstitutional. Trump was basically Palpatine and Valorum was Biden, sitting duck, who Palpatine and Palpatine points out Valorum's corruption in order to hide his own, just like Trump did. Now, let's get to Attack of the Clones. Because by this point, the Republic is in absolute shambles. There's a full-blown separatist movement, wars looming, and the Senate, like a distracted dad at a Little League game, is barely paying attention. Enter Palpatine again, who convinces the Senate to give him emergency powers to deal with this crisis. If history has taught us anything, it's that emergency powers are about as temporary as crabs, right? They gonna go away, but it's gonna be a minute, brother. Not that I would know. But Palpatine then introduces the Clone Army, which is a move that the Jedi should have clearly been suspicious of, but of course they're wise warrior Jedi who can sense the Force, but not basic deception. Just, their policy there is, hey, roll with it. Count Dooku, who was a former Jedi himself, created this crisis to grant Palpatine emergency powers because he's a double agent. This is the beginning of the militarization of the Republic into an empire. The Jedi, who were peacekeepers, are now generals, compromising their moral standards, making them a tool in the Republic's downfall. Palpatine's rise is not unlike ones like Nixon or George Bush, U.S. presidents who embroiled themselves in controversy over how expanded executive powers, much like Palpatine's consolidation of control of the Republic, lead to what they lead to. Like Nixon and Watergate, his abuse of executive actions led to his downfall, and Palpatine's orchestration of the crisis of the war justified his takeover. Now, George Bush, in this conversation, is very interesting because during when this movie came out, this was during the war on terror, and we saw the passing of the Patriot Act and the war in Iraq, and the Bush administration capitalized on fear, much like Palpatine did, to increase surveillance and justify military actions. Palpatine uses fear of the separatist movement to push the Senate toward to push them toward the creation of a clone army. And that is how a democracy starts sliding into a dictatorship. George Lucas was never subtle about this with these parallels. It's no coincidence that Attack of the Clones came out at the same time the world was grappling with these issues and was drawing from real history to show how fragile democracies become when fear is used as manipulation. Just like Bush, just like Nixon, Palpatine uses external threats, real or imagined, to convince the public that the only way to stay safe is to give up just a little more freedom. Now let's talk proxy wars for a second, right? In Star Wars, the Galactic Civil War is a lot like the Cold War. The Rebel Alliance and the Empire are fighting each other the same way the U.S. and the Soviet Union did, through intermediaries, until they start blowing shit up, which we never did in the Cold War. Tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. The Clone Wars are a perfect example of a proxy war. Palpatine, as Chancellor, manipulated both sides to weaken the Jedi and to consolidate his own power. The war he's like that quote from Mac, It's Always Sunny. When you play both sides, you never lose. The war is framed as noble on the surface, but truthfully, it's part of the grand plan to create chaos and solidify control. This isn't just science fiction. It's a reflection of how the real world works. World superpowers use smaller nations as battlegrounds for ideologies. George Lucas shows us through Palpatine how proxy wars can be used to manipulate a democracy from the inside. And the Jedi have a meeting with him in Attack of the Clones. It's a subtle moment, but it's pretty significant that it foreshadows the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. The scene has underlying tensions between the Jedi and the political leadership of the Republic because it serves as a critical and it serves as this critical moment between Palpatine's long-term manipulation of the Jedi and the Senate. At this point in Attack of the Clones, just to give you some context, they're at the brink of war. And Count Dooku and the Separatists are threatening to break away from the Republic. And the fears are that the Republic's military is insufficient to counter this threat. Palpatine convenes this meeting with the Jedi to discuss rising tensions and potential for open conflict, right? And he appears to be concerned about the galactic security. This moment is carefully orchestrated by him because this is what he wants to further his own agenda. And it's how he accumulates power to push the Republic into a total empire. One of the key dynamics at play in this meeting is the growing disconnect between the Jedi and the Senate. The Jedi, who traditionally act as peacekeepers and mediators, are increasingly being drawn into conflicts. Mace Windu, Yoda, other members of the Jedi Council show signs of their unease of their shift in role, essentially. They can sense the dark side is clouding their ability to foresee events, and they recognize that the Republic is moving down a dangerous path by focusing on military solutions to political problems. Yoda, in particular, is cautious, expressing his concern about the government's instability in the galaxy, worrying about the dark side's amplified, worrying about the dark side being amplified, the fact that the Jedi, their ability to use the Force has been diminished. This is signaling that something deeper is at play here, but they can't pinpoint the source of the disturbance, which we, as the audience, know is Palpatine. And that's where his manipulation is important to talk about, because he, of course, knows exactly what he's doing. He has skillfully masked his intentions by playing the role of a concerned, reluctant leader. In this scene, Palpatine is deliberately pushing the Jedi and the Senate toward granting him some more power so he could create a clone army, which will eventually help him take out the Jedi. This is one of those early steps in Palpatine's larger plan, who has already been in power longer than he should have at this point. He feigns helplessness in the face of the separatist threat, right? Like, he's suggesting that he should decide on how best to respond, knowing that he's going to do the extreme measure response, including the authorization of emergency powers through the creation of an army. Creating the illusion of external threats, Palpatine can manipulate the Senate into giving him the power he needs to dismantle the Republic from the within, and that's where the Jedi's blind spot sort of comes into play. Windu and Yoda are weary of Palpatine's expanding influence, but they can't see the full extent of his manipulation. He might just be another greedy politician, and it's partly because their vision is clouded. It's also because the Jedi have become too intertwined with the Republic's political system, when that's, it's separation of church and state. They're no longer operate as independent agents of peace, but they're servants of the political machinery of the Senate. This entanglement with the Republic blinds the Jedi. The reality is that Palpatine uses the very system that they're sworn to protect to dismantle the Republic. In trying to preserve the status quo, they fail to realize the Republic is being corrupted from within. This scene is a microcosm of the larger theme of the prequel trilogy, which is the Jedi's inability to act in a current political landscape that is changing, and that leads to their downfall and an empire for everybody. And to me, this is where Star Wars really shines. As an adult, how I can appreciate it. It's a lesson. It's meant to educate, especially young people, how democracies crumble. George Lucas uses these tools to teach us about the dangers of unchecked power. And that's where we get to the tragedy of Jar Jar Binks. You ever hear the tragedy of Jar Jar the Binks? Jar Jar is democracy's dumbest downfall. And here's where you're about to get truly ridiculous. Do you know who hands Palpatine the emergency powers, the keys to everything? Yeah, it's Jar Jar Binks, the Gungan whose main political qualification is kinda being friends with Queen Amidala. He's personally responsible for the rise of the Empire, which means that in Star Wars logic, the entire collapse of the democracy is basically caused by an idiot who was actually no different than any other politician. Now, I know you're thinking that's ridiculous. No real government would ever let unqualified, buffoonish figure gain immense power through sheer luck and populist manipulation. Yeah. Sit down. Sit the fuck down for a second, okay? Attack of the Clones, Jar Jar is unwittingly a pivotal role in the creation of the clone army, and by extension, the rise of the Galactic Empire. Right, his well-intentioned nature and actions are manipulated by Palpatine, making him one of the most tragic characters in the saga, in my opinion. He is well-meaning, but politically, I'm not sure how he got the job. He was sort of thrust into this situation that was far beyond his understanding. And after Padme leaves Coruscant to attempt to hide from the assassination attempt, she appoints Jar Jar as her representative in the Senate. This move, which was motivated in her trust by him, ultimately ends up being a huge fuck up and error and opens the door for Palpatine to explore Jar Jar's lack of political savvy, if that's what you want to call it. I'm a Jar Jar lover. I ain't gonna hate on him too much. Because when Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is presented with the problem of the separatist movement, he keeps telling everyone he needs emergency powers, but there's resistance to that because the Senate doesn't want to approve the creation of clones before the separatists attack. Palpatine knows Jar Jar's simplistic view of the galaxy and counts on him to take the bait. Jar Jar, believing he is acting in the best interest of the Republic, the guy who put his hand inside of a car motor, he is thinking this is the path Padme would have followed, the thing that she's been fighting against for 18 months. This is exactly what she would do. She would support this, hell yeah, and give Palpatine these emergency powers. And boom, there we have a clone army. This act looks like it's protecting the Republic, but eventually it's going to be used for Palpatine's takeover as his transition into Emperor. The clone army that Jar Jar helped authorize becomes this tool which Palpatine uses to later control and execute Order 66, exterminating the Jedi, which would have been his extreme resistance to his empire. And he's viewed as this comedic relief character because he is. His actions are of enormous consequence. Jar Jar's vulnerability and his desire to please people around him, coupled with his inability to see machinations at play, make him easy to be a Palpatine pawn. He is a character who's often ridiculed for his clumsiness, his buffoonery. He is directly responsible for one of the most significant events in galactic history. And it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignorance in politics. He's an unwitting accomplice in Palpatine's rise to power, and by extension, the downfall of the Jedi and the birth of the Empire and the death of a democracy. This also shows you how great of a manipulator Palpatine is. He doesn't rely solely on political allies or the dark side to achieve his goals. He preys on well-meaning but gullible people whose good intentions can be twisted to serve his own ends. In this case, it becomes the perfect symbol on how a republic's ideals are subverted from within, using the trust and loyalty of its citizens. The prequel trilogy represents a compelling narrative to the fall of democracy and the role of ambitious people and how they shape history. It's a trilogy that explores how democratic institutions can be manipulated and weaponized. Drawing parallels to modern times, Trump's political career mirrors that of Palpatine, who is a figure that exploits fear, division, and institutional weaknesses in order to consolidate power. Elon Musk resembles Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, a brilliant, ambitious figure whose desire for control and innovation led him toward an increasingly authoritarian tendency type of dude. And you look at these figures alongside Star Wars to better understand how power, persuasion, and populism shape the political landscape and technology landscape. Trade wars and economic disruptions have always been political tools, right? Like it's they create hardship for industries in order to and consumers in order to justify stronger executive control. That's why you got to look at guys like Elon Musk as Anakin Skywalker, the promise and peril of a visionary. Anakin's fall from hero to villain in Revenge of the Sith is one of those tragic arcs in Star Wars because it begins as this prodigious talent is there, told he's going to bring balance, but he's completely gradually consumed by his own fears and his own ego and his thirst for control. His transformation into Darth Vader is not an overnight shift, but it's a slow descent that's fueled into a belief that he can reshape the galaxy. Musk, one of the most influential figures in the modern era, follows the similar trajectory. Like Anakin, he started as a young balding guy who pushed boundaries with the Force. His technology and innovation, his work with Tesla and Neuralink and all these things positioned him in a pedestal of a hero, much like Anakin on the pedestal of a Jedi Knight and war hero. But Musk's desire for control, his disregard for democratic principles, and his combative relationship with critics mirror Anakin's fall into authoritarianism. Anakin's greatest fear is losing the one that he loves, which is Padme. Palpatine exploits this, convincing him that embracing the dark side may prevent her death, the same way Musk framed himself as a protector of free speech and innovation, arguing that drastic measures have to be taken in order to restore free speech, right? Leading him to purchase Twitter, which was justified as a move to save free speech, when in reality, it was tied to eradicate governance, mass layoffs, a growing amount of intolerance and misinformation, and the same way how Anakin meant to save democracy, he destroyed it. And turning against institutions is something Anakin and Elon have in common. Elonikin, I'll call him. Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader when he marches into the Jedi Temple, slaughtering those he once called friends. Musk, too, has also turned against the very institutions that have supported him. You know, after claiming immense government subsidies for Tesla and SpaceX, what'd he do? Chains off bureaucracy. He created Doge and got rid of a hell of a lot of those federal bodies. His increasing disdain for regulatory insight and, workers' rights reflect Anakin's growing, sort of reflects Anakin's belief that he's the only one capable of making the right decisions. Which brings us to Revenge of the Sith, the oh shit moment. We're officially in the thunderous applause stages of Palpatine's entire war to justify seizing power. Then convinces everyone that the Jedi, the literal peacekeepers, are traitors and trying to stage a coup. And guess what? People just believe him. That's like the president waking up one morning and saying, "Hey everyone, the FBI is now evil and probably we should kill them." That would never happen. Instead of asking a single question, Congress just stands up and starts applauding him like a bunch of deranged seals. Revenge of the Sith is the Republic's fall and its completion. The war provides Palpatine the excuse to declare the Jedi traitors, execute Order 69, and rebrand the Republic into the Empire. The Senate fucking cheers during this transition, showing you how easily a society can be manipulated into accepting tyranny when they don't know what's happening to them. The Jedi are almost entirely wiped out, and the Sith are in control for the first time in 1,000 years. The galaxy is no longer a place of debate and freedom. It's ruled by fear. Palpatine got this power to combat the Separatists, but he used the fear, particularly the fear of the Jedi, to justify his continued rule. He manufactured public support for his authoritarian policies, convincing the Senate to willingly surrender democracy. When he declares that the Republic is being reorganized into a galactic empire for a safer and secure society, they erupt into orgasms. Trump's presidency saw the similar use of propaganda and manufactured crises to consolidate power. His administration frequents pushed disinformation. They attacked the media as an enemy of the people. When he got shot, I knew that was the day he was going to be president. He delegitimizes institutions and portrays himself as the savior of the American way of life. The January 6th insurrection, like Order 66, was an event triggered by years of propaganda, which followers were led to believe that democracy itself had been undermined, just as Palpatine had convinced the galaxy that the Jedi were traitors. Trump fucking attempted a coup and convinced his followers that the 2020 election was stolen and led them to do some meth head activities, dog. Like that footage still makes me laugh. By the time of A New Hope, the galaxy is fully in the Empire's control. The Senate gets swept away. It's dissolved. Imperial governors and moffs have control over their territories. The military, including stormtroopers and Vader, rule all. The Empire rules through terror, epitomized by the name of its not super chill governmental building, the Death Star. That's my Norm Macdonald. Which is, big old compliance weapon because it can destroy planets. Unlike the Republic, it allowed different species from different planets to allow representation. The Empire is humanocentric, right? They favor humans over aliens, suppressing diversity. In the Republic, yeah, it was corrupt and inefficient, but it still functioned as a democracy. The Empire, there's an emperor ruling with an iron fist. The Jedi were noble warriors, and now they're reduced to a myth. Most citizens don't even believe that they existed, or they believe them to be extinct or irrelevant. A stark contrast in their central role in the prequels. The Sith, on the other hand, though in secret, remain at power in Palpatine's will. The opposition is the Rebel Alliance, led by Leia, Mon Mothma, and Luke Skywalker, to restore democracy. The Empire Strikes Back depicts the height of the Empire's power. But the rebellion suffers major losses. However, by the time we get to Return of the Jedi, the destruction of the second Death Star and Vader's redemption and Palpatine's end signal the end of the Imperial rule, setting the stage for a new Republic. Once Palpatine has full control, the Republic is scrapped, and it's in favor of the Empire. All dissent is crushed, and anyone who questions authority will get vaporized, which, to be fair, is very efficient, honestly. You can't filibuster if you've been force-choked to death. Trump and Palpatine also thrive off the cult of personality, and it's one of the most striking similarities between the two of them. Both figures present themselves as this ultimate authority, right? Dismissing dissenting voices as illegitimate. Palpatine erodes the Republic from within through using legal means to subvert democracy, just as Trump attacked democratic norms while still operating through the system, whether through stacking the Supreme Court, restraining congressional oversight by using executive orders to bypass legislation. Trump expanded presidential powers in ways that we feared could lead to an authoritarian government. The transition from the Republic to the prequels to the Empire of the originals reflects Star Wars' central themes about corruption, and the prequels show how easily a society can fall into dictatorship. And in conclusion, this is a warning from a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars, the prequels illustrate how democracies do not fall overnight. They are eroded. Even though Star Wars takes place in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, the galaxy is a lot closer than we think. The prequels illustrate how easily a democracy can fall. Not through external conquest, but through manipulation and populist rhetoric and unchecked ambitions of political figures and the people they surround themselves with. Palpatine's slow takeover of the Republic serves as a mirror on how modern political leaders erode institutions from within, using fear and division as tools for control. Meanwhile, Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader is a cautionary tale of the dangers of an unchecked ambition, even from those who start with the best intentions. Trump's rise in political strategy closely resemble Palpatine's, from manufacturing crises to consolidating power through fear. Musk is the embodiment of the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker, who was a brilliant individual whose quest for control risks turning into the very thing he opposed. I don't think Anakin is transphobic. Star Wars is more than just science fiction. It's a reflection of history. And if we're not careful, the fall of the Republic probably won't remain as a story in a galaxy far, far away. Democracies don't usually fall with a bang. It's more of a whimper, with people realizing they're handing over freedoms in exchange for security, until they wake up one day and realize they're living under a giant Star Destroyer. We're not immune to this. Right now, we have leaders stoking fear, attacking legitimacy of elections, demanding more power. We have politicians who, if given the choice, would absolutely install a throne room in the Senate chamber just so his VP could fuck the cushions. And half of that Congress would cheer. The rebellion starts with you. It starts with your vigilance. It starts with us not sitting back and letting a creepy old dude slowly take control while we do nothing. Otherwise, before you know it, we're going to be living in an empire, and the only way out will involve a farm boy doing some incest stuff with his sister, and a smuggler who human traffics them into a government building. And that, my friends, it's not just a movie. it's a warning from a certain point of view. Again, my opinion, not a be-all, the end-all. Let me know where I got it wrong. Please feel free to leave a comment. Love the open discussions that we have in these sections. I voted for Bernie Sanders 3 times, so no matter who wins, I lose. There's just something that I have been working on the last few weeks as I've been watching the news. I won't make political videos generally on this channel. This is my outlet to talk about Star Wars. Sunday, I'm going to talk about A New Hope. Until then, just be on the lookout for any politicians in dark cloaks. And everything I told you was true from a certain point of view.